Hi, this is Granite with the Granite Mountain Movie Club. Thanks for listening. I'm putting this up front because I just sat down to edit my most recent conversation with Cool Frasier, and the audio is not very good. I think I had my mic settings not set correctly. And then also we had a few technical difficulties, some internet outages. So there's some parts where the edits maybe don't sound very natural. Maybe it sounds like we're cutting off mid thought or something. So apologies for that. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and please subscribe. YouTube kind of blocks some features and things like that until you have a lot of followers. So please subscribe. Thanks. Hello and welcome to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. If you found this show, please subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff, because it's hard to grow a podcast. Now, if you randomly found this show, you might be wondering, like, what are you about to experience? So I'll give the co-host here, Cool Frasier, an opportunity to explain what this show is, really.
Well, this is the Granite Mountain Movie Club, where we come on here and we talk about movies and pop culture and other things like that. And it's mainly from like a guy perspective, but also like a based guy perspective, because we are based here and red-pilled. And so we just talk about either movies we like or sometimes movies we don't like. And you come along for the ride, and you can give us recommendations of things to review, and we might do it.
Yeah, leave a comment of something you think we should watch and talk about. This episode today will be a little. We do this every once in a while, where we're not actually talking about a specific movie this time. We're just going to talk about. We're kind of catching up because it's been about a month since we last talked. So we're going to talk about.
There's been a lot of streaming shows, so I kind of feel like this is the streamy episode. We're going to go into all big streaming shows except the Dragon one.
Yeah, and then we'll talk. We'll probably talk about some upcoming movies too, that for which we've only seen the trailers, but we'll talk about our impression at least of the trailer.
Yes, we're famous for reviewing movies based off of the trailer.
Yeah, which I think is I've often said, I haven't tested myself, but I think that I bet I could judge pretty accurately, like a Rotten Tomato score based on a trailer within like 5 points. I think I could do that because trailers now, I think, signal so much of how the movie's really going to be that I don't think it's actually wrong to judge a movie by the trailer.
Yeah, we love judging things by minimal information.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's. Well, before we jump into it, anything interesting going on in your world?
Many interesting things happening in the Cool Frasier household, including I'm a big sumo wrestling fan now.
Oh yeah, I've seen you talking about sumo. How'd you get into sumo, and what do people need to know if they want to get into sumo?
Okay, if you want to get into sumo, basically YouTube is the place. And look up a channel called Don, Don. So that was one of the first videos I saw. It was like white sumo wrestler that is small or something. And so it was this small white guy that made it to like the top ranks of sumo, and the guy was just like highlighting his style of sumo wrestling. And I was like, wait, what's this about? And so, because I didn't know white guys could be sumos or whatever, and I thought you had to be a big fat guy. But he was like maybe like 5'9" and like 170 pounds, or maybe like something like that.
So they have like a small division.
No. There's no weight divisions in sumo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's also kind of a cool thing, because you can have like a little guy go up against a big guy. But they showed this guy. He was from like the Eastern Europe somewhere, and he like just did really good because he had like good wrestling technique, and so he would get these big guys on like these technical things. He never became like the best, but
Mhm.
Anyway, so then I got interested in it because I was like, oh, I didn't know there was technique. I thought it was just kind of like slap them around and push them until they fall down. But there's like a lot of technique and cool stuff to get into. So sumo is where it's at.
Yeah, and you're into martial arts generally, so this.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the martial arts episode. So like I can recognize good martial arts technique when I see it, and I just had never watched sumo before, but yeah, there's like a lot of judo and jujitsu type moves in it that you wouldn't know otherwise. Um but but yeah, it's a cool sport, and apparently they have 6 tournaments a year. They're 15 days long and they're fun to watch.
Who's the top guy right now?
There's only one Yokozuna, that's the top rank, and he's Tero no Fuji is his name. And he's Mongolian, and he's like a huge dude, but he's got a bunch of knee injuries, so he might be retiring soon.
Oh, so he's Mongolian. How many of the guys aren't Japanese?
So, I would say it's like at least 50% Japanese, if not more, but
Hmm.
there's been a big increase in Mongolian wrestlers because apparently Mongolians have their own wrestling that they do that's similar to sumo, kind of. That's called Bach.
I know they're really into like breast milk and wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. Like you may have seen like the Mongolian wrestling outfits. They have like just sleeves that they wear.
Yeah.
And so anyway, a bunch of like Mongolians found out that they were good at sumo because they're like much bigger than Japanese people, and so they've kind of been dominating the sport for the last like 20 years.
Hmm. How do the Japanese feel about that?
Not they don't like it, so they limited it. Well, actually, they did it because there were 3 USA Yokozunas in the 90s
Oh,
because they got a bunch of Samoans and Hawaiian dudes,
yeah.
and they were like dominating in the 90s. So then they made a rule that each sumo stable, which is kind of like a team, kind of,
Hmm.
was only allowed to have one foreign-born sumo
Uh,
wrestler.
yeah, I have to confess that was it Yokozuna?
Huh?
I thought that was a person. I thought that was a guy's name.
No, that's a rank.
Yeah, I didn't realize that because I remember growing up hearing about Yokozuna, and I thought that was just a guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's a rank. And so there's only been like 68 of them since like the 1300s.
Whoa,
And so like you can only get it if you're like the best of the best.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gonna start a sumo channel?
Maybe I will. There's a few sumo channels already that are doing like English content, and there's a few like people who will stream the fights and do like commentary on it. So I feel like I would have to know Japanese to do it though.
Yeah, that's
But
cool. Well, yeah,
I'm
I'll probably check out some more sumo then.
yeah, we'll have to watch it.
In my world, I just got back from traveling and from some family injuries and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's been like a month I think since basically a month since we last talked. Been kind of busy, but yeah, I went to a new part of the United States. We'll talk about it on another episode. I'll go into it. There's some interesting stuff from it, but a part of the United States I'd never been to. So, but now I have been there, and it's left an impression on me. But
Wow.
with that, let's get into some of the things that we have been watching. I think you've been watching more because I have been, like I said, traveling and dealing with some injured family members and stuff, helping them out. So, where do you want to start?
Um, maybe we start with dem rangs actually first.
power, power of dem rings.
Oh, loud of dem rangs. Um, so yeah, the Rings of Power I've been watching, and we may have already talked about it on this. I don't know because like
Uh,
it's
we
been going for a little bit,
we
but
talked about it kind of before. I think before it really aired.
okay.
So we hadn't seen it. So is it over now? The season?
It is over. It just finished today.
Did you watch the final one today?
Yeah, yeah. Like it came out like last night technically, so I
Okay.
watched it last night.
So for context, I watched the first 2 episodes, and uh, I'll give my take real quick, just because I only saw those 2 episodes. Um, there was a controversy going into it, both just around like the legacy of Tolkien and the like the racial
Woke culture
composition of
destroying America.
what's that?
Woke culture destroying
Yeah,
America.
like there's some a woke element to it, and they were putting like black people in it, which is not really consistent with other Tolkien properties, um, or just like the sort of world building of Tolkien. So all that said, like going into it, there was this controversy. I watched the first two episodes. The main takeaway for me was just that they were not very interesting. Um,
Hmm.
so so I just stopped watching. I just wasn't gonna keep going. But I didn't. I mean, there was some obvious. Like the first episode had some really overt like girl power moments that were
Yes.
cheesy. Um, and but that was the gravest sin, I guess, that I saw. Other than that, so but you've seen the whole thing, so I want to hear your take.
I've seen the whole thing. I do think it gets better. I'll say that than the first couple episodes because it's built off of like the source material is kind of confusing, right? It's not an actual story, right? It's
Hmm.
it's kind of like the notes of the backstory of the Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah.
So there's not like really an explicit story to draw from that's as polished as something like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, where it's like you've got a main character and you follow them around and stuff like that. So in my opinion, the early episodes really suffered just because you're like, who are these people? What's this? What's that? Like, and not that it's like I'm not. Oh, you need to know enough Lord of the Rings lore to get it, but just like as a story, it's kind of like, what are we doing? Like, who are we following? Who are all these things? Why are we just randomly hopping back and forth to like totally different characters doing different things?
Yeah.
Which is like fine if it's done well, which this is really not done that well. So it's kind of like annoying how like confusing and all over the place it is.
Hmm.
But and beyond that, like I would say the dialogue and like the general like feel of it is not so much like, oh, this feels like a real thing. It just feels like people acting in a fantasy movie, which to an extent is okay.
Yeah. So I didn't see this episode because I'd stopped watching, but I saw the clip go around where it was like the they were like elves will not replace us or something like that. What was
So
going on
elves
there?
will not replace us was a Photoshop.
Well, not no, not literally, but like
Though somebody did Photoshop it though, and saying elves will not replace us, and they were all doing like a Roman salute.
yeah,
That was a Photoshop.
wasn't that like an actual story? Something like a storyline though. Like there's too many elves or something, and
So yes. So basically, in Numenor, which is the um, good human kingdom that Gondor basically is based off of later on, but it's also a stand-in in the Lord of the Rings lore for Noah and kind of like the flood. So it's a land that doesn't exist in Middle Earth. It's kind of separate from it, and it's kind of like the antediluvian society of men
hmm
in kind of the biblical uh side of Tolkien stuff, right?
yeah,
I don't know, may have lost everyone on that. But anyway, there's this conflict because there's some people who like elves and some people who don't like elves anymore. And so like basically the elves set up that town for them. They're like, "Here you go, humans. You were so good at helping fight this war. We're giving you this cool island nation, Atlantis or whatever."
yeah.
And then but then like the elves just disappeared for thousands of years or whatever. And then in the show, Galadriel shows back up. She's the elf, and they're like, "Whoa, elves are bad." They're like Mexicans. No, they don't say that. But yeah, there's like a whole emphasis on like they have this like tradesman culture where like you have to get badges, like you have to get merit badges.
The elves do.
No, the humans, like
Oh,
in
okay.
on Numenor, like you can't just like be a blacksmith. You have to like get your badge.
Yeah, you got to do your apprenticeship
And so
and
then one of the blacksmiths is like, they're gonna be better at us at being a blacksmith and take our blacksmithing jobs. So I
yeah,
guess it's
okay.
supposed to be like fascism or something,
But
or
the yeah,
MAGA
nativism,
Republican.
but the humans are in the narrative of the story, the humans are just overreacting.
Well, in the narrative of this story, there's like one guy who just hates elves for some reason. You don't know why. Um, and in the narrative of like the Tolkien stuff, it's Sauron is turning him against the elves and
Oh,
against
with
righteousness.
anti-elf rhetoric.
Yeah, and Sauron has kind of like taken the form of some other, he's like disguised and doing things from behind the scenes, and he causes the downfall or the flooding of Numenor or whatever.
Okay.
That's
Well,
in the lore, but not in the show.
yeah. So you say it got better
It
from the.
gets better when some of the storylines start coming together, so it's a little tighter,
Uh-huh.
right? And so the story of this is quite small in the grander story that's being told here. So like not much happens in this, and it's kind of
Mhm.
just setting it up. But the later episodes have kind of like a big battle. They have a few smaller battles of orcs and humans and stuff like that. So it gets a little more interesting. There's some like wizarding stuff happening. So it kind of picks up as it goes along. Um
Is Dumbledore in this one?
you don't know. It's the best I can say for that.
Well,
There's a weird guy who falls from the sky, and he kind of looks like a wizard. And
is
you're
it
like, is this supposed to be Gandalf? But they never say who he is, and then you're just like, who's this guy? So, but yeah. So it's what's interesting about it, and I've listened to a couple behind the scenes things, is they actually want it to fit in Peter Jackson's universe intentionally. So
I saw that they have a second season.
I think so. Yeah.
They've
So
announced.
like they are intending that this world that we're watching leads right up into the movies that we saw with Elijah Wood,
Hmm.
which is an interesting choice with like a lot of their like then it does kind of make the consistency a little odd, of like
Yeah.
black elves and hobbits and things like that because it's like, well, what happened to all of them?
Yeah, that was a big joke even before it aired. People were saying, well, if this is a prequel and you have races that weren't in the later stuff, well, how are you going to explain why they're no longer there?
Right. Right. And I was giving them a pass cuz I'm like, "Hey, this is just a different thing. They can cast whoever they want to cast or whatever." But yeah, they like there's like for instance, they use the same design of the Balrog fire monster.
Oh, really?
The same exact design as the Peter Jackson movies. So, it's like supposed to be in the same universe.
Hmm. So,
And like the music guy was like, "Oh, you know, did the score to sound more like Peter Jackson stuff." So like they're like referencing directly.
yeah, that's one thing I noticed in those first two episodes is that um, I think Howard Shore did the music for the Peter Jackson movies, and his stuff, his stuff is to me, it's like iconic. It's like the what
Mhm.
part of what made those movies work so well is just that the score was very good, and in this show, it didn't seem very good. It just
Yeah.
it seemed like passable, but kind of like stock music.
Yeah, and then another thing along these lines that I got from a behind the scenes thing is the hobbits are nomadic people at this point called Harfoots,
Oh
and
yeah,
they have wagons with big round wheels, and they said that they made the wheels of their carts look like the doors on Hobbiton, as if like they kind of just settled and used their wheels for their doors.
Yeah.
So it's like intended to be like directly tied to the Peter Jackson movies, which I feel like is the wrong thing to do, but oh well.
I saw a headline about Jackson saying he wasn't consulted, as if he wanted to have been.
Right. Yeah. You know he directed the Hobbit movies against his will.
No, I didn't. But yeah, we're back from technical difficulties. The last thing I heard was something about Peter Jackson being forced to make the Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, so he originally wasn't going to do it and it was supposed to be Guillermo del Toro.
Hmm.
And then he couldn't do it because he had some conflict or something. And then they were like looking for another director, and they brought in Peter Jackson just as like to consult because they had like already like started the shooting window.
Yeah,
Like they just never found someone, so they just made him do it.
yeah. Guillermo del Toro, del whatever.
Yeah,
He's the one. He did the fish out of water, or whatever his movie, Shape of Water,
yeah,
right? He was probably busy with fish. He's probably doing fish
yeah.
stuff.
I think he was doing Fish.
He was probably hanging out with fish,
Yeah, yeah. He was under the sea with
doing
James Cameron
yeah, but he's doing like James Cameron's doing research, but Del Toro's just doing like perverted fish
eating
stuff.
fish sticks.
Yeah. Um, well, those movies weren't that well received, but it seems like
Right, and part of it was like his heart wasn't into it, and he didn't really like prepare or plan it, so he
yeah,
was just kind of like going through the motions. But
yeah. I honestly hardly remember them. I watched the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy probably 5 times each for each movie or more, but I probably only saw the Hobbit trilogy one time through.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. My last point on Rings of Power is if you like Lord of the Rings, I think it's fine. Like the Lord of the Rings Gone Woke isn't so bad, other than something I'm going to talk about later, which is there's literally like, well, it's better than some Marvel movies because there are some hot chicks in it. Not that all movies need hot chicks, but it's just like why wouldn't you have a hot chick in it? And so Galadriel is not hot, even though she could be. And but the healer lady, I feel like she's kind of hot.
I don't think I was in. I don't think
She's
she
like
appeared.
Latina lady who's in love with the elf.
Oh, I know who she is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like the single mom.
Anyway,
The
yeah,
single
the single mom. Maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know.
mom. You could,
I'm
yeah,
into weird territory.
you could say,
Nim would like her. That's all I'll
yeah.
say. No, or JRC. Um, but anyway, uh, yeah, like it's just kind of like with Galadriel, she's kind of the worst character, which is sad because the actress is kind of like I feel like she really like looks like an elf,
Yeah,
and
I think so
apparently
too.
she's Welsh, which like one of the elfish languages is based on Welsh.
Hmm.
And so like I feel like she's like great for it, but they made some odd choices with her that just make her very unlikable.
Yeah. Well, so would you? It sounds like
Oh,
it's okay.
so what they do well is this is what Rings of Power is the first 5 minute intro to Lord of the Rings where they're like, this is what happened in the past with the
Yeah,
ring. That's what this is about.
yeah. All these
That
people
five
got
minute intro.
together. They made some rings. Sauron came to power.
Yep, yep. And then they fought Sauron, cut off the finger, didn't throw it in the mountain, and then fell in the lake.
Yeah,
Boom. So like that's we know the plot, right? But they did a good job, better than another show I'm going to talk about in a little bit, in making that work in a show where you want some suspense and you want some kind of unanswered questions and things
well,
like that.
let's go on to that next one. What's the next one you wanted to get into?
Well, She-Hulk.
Oh yeah, well let's do that one. Let's have that be the last one you talk about.
Okay.
So, but then you had this other one, Andor.
Well, yeah, by contrast, Andor, I'm loving it. It's great. So Andor, they also spent like an exorbitant amount of money on. Can someone look that up?
I'll look into it.
Okay, yeah, look it up while I'm talking. Um, so they they put a bunch of money into it, but as opposed to Lord of the Rings of Power, where sometimes you're like, they spent this much money on it, they spent $1 billion on this. Like with Andor, I feel like you can really feel it in that like the set design is like immaculate. Everything looks like it's was done in the 70s. Like it looks like a machine. Like all their computers are like 70s light up LED things like that like don't actually show any information, but they're like looking at it as if it's like a super detailed screen, but it's just like a blinking light on a clear plastic thing.
Hmm.
And so like I really like that. Like it's very like retro future. It looks like the original Star Wars universe. You know, it doesn't have like that weird CGI polish that like the prequels even had and stuff like that, where it's like this seems like a more high tech than what came after it. It seems like you're in like the 1970s Star Wars world.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that is something that like inconsistencies in the tech is something that's always. I mean, it shouldn't matter, but it does. Like I remember when Lucas's like prequels came out, and it's like this feels like the future, but it's a story that's supposed to be in the past.
Right,
Like
and
that,
then they'll excuse it by being like, "Oh, well, the Empire made things get worse," or something.
yeah,
But it's like, no, this just looks like a CGI like 3D rendering of things, whereas before it was just like a blinky tube.
yeah. I looked at this budget, by the way. It's estimates. This is just some. I don't know what this is.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know what site this is. It doesn't matter. 15 to 25 million per episode. They're saying for Andor, but 60 million for Rings of Power.
Yeah, but that's a decent amount of money still. Um, so Andor, and for those who don't know, Andor is essentially the prequel to Rogue One, which was the prequel to the first Star Wars, Star Wars, the first Star Wars.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so and in among like our side of things, Rogue One is kind of regarded as the best of the new Star Wars stuff. And so this is related to that. So some people were like, okay, let's give this a shot. It's kind of an odd choice because like nobody really like loved. No one was like Cassian Andor is my favorite Star Wars person, right? But he's like that's what they're doing, and so it's kind of interesting. It's essentially about like the beginnings of the rebellion in the Empire. But like I said, it's got a really great atmosphere and look to it. There's like droids in it that are like cool and interesting. Um, it doesn't feel like stupid CGI stuff is in it too much. You actually feel like you're in a world, like whereas with these other Star Wars shows, you really feel like you're just on a set that's being projected behind them.
Hmm.
And so that's done much better than the other recent Star Wars stuff, like Mandalorian and Boba Fett and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's cool about it is when they were like, "Oh, we're going to do stuff in the Star Wars universe that's not about the Star Wars people." You were like, "Okay," but so far we've kind of only gotten like Boba Fett and then like Obi-Wan. Like we've gotten, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got a new Boba Fett and then we got actual Boba Fett and then we got Obi-Wan. And
Well,
so it was, yeah.
real quick on this, just to give you an idea of where I'm at, and something I think is crazy. So I've seen The Mandalorian. I think I've seen everything they've made under that project. I kind of like it. I mean, I think it's kind of good. It's like this is not an original take, but it's kind of like a western. It's kind of like
Uh-huh.
a '60s western serial television show. Like you tune in, he's got a new he's got a new little mission. You know, he's got to rob a bank. He's got to do a train heist or something. All right, I kind of like it. It's like straightforward and simple. And then there's like then there's the long arcing story of Baby Yoda. Um, I kind of like that one. And then I saw some of Boba Fett. Was just like very bored. I could not find an angle to care about on that one. So I think I only watched like 3 or 4
Yeah, that
episodes.
one is bad and gets worse.
And then there's Obi-Wan, which I've not even checked out. But
Uh-huh.
it's crazy to me with Obi-Wan to think that like if you had told me in before the prequels came out, the George Lucas prequels, or even after that, but at some point in the last like 15 years, if you had told me, oh, they're gonna do a TV show about like Obi-Wan's origins and stuff, and it's gonna just be him being like this cool Jedi guy, and then they're gonna make it. I would have said, oh, that's gonna be amazing. That's gonna be like the coolest
Yeah.
Star Wars. That's like the perfect Star Wars project. Everyone loves Obi-Wan. Everyone wants to know why what he was doing in between, the fall of Anakin and the
Yeah, like
rise of
busting
Luke.
crime rings and who knows,
Yeah,
chopping off
what was he up
arms.
to? But then it's dropped, and it's like I guess some people watched it, but it's like no one seems to care about it. Like it
No, yeah.
didn't make a splash at all.
Well, Boba Fett was bad, and I think that soured a lot of people because like Mandalorian had kind of like changed people's tunes a bit.
Uh huh.
But you get Boba Fett, the best character ever, and also I'm stealing this take, but um, you could go into the fact that he's a clone of Jango Fett, and that all the people related to him were just the clone troopers who were like cannon fodder. They're essentially like slaves
Hmm.
to the Empire or whatever, and he's like one of them. And they could have like delved into like the ethics of slavery in the universe and stuff like that. And like they could have talked a lot more about like really interesting deep themes with the character of Boba Fett, but instead it was kind of just like he's an old tired guy who's all beat up, and he gets like some weird they them people to help fight the bad guys in the city.
Yeah.
Like it really was like nothing. Like they had like no story to tell. It was just kind of like let's just do some like Star Warsy stuff.
Yeah.
And so with Obi-Wan they actually had somewhat of a story to tell, but the main actress of the Black Jedi Hunter was just a terrible actress, or at least she came across as bad.
Oh yeah. We kind of talked about this, didn't
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
And then also the stuff with Darth Vader looks amazing on a 4K TV, right? But then like everything else looks like it's a video game. So they just built like an Obi-Wan video game and have him kind of meander around a bit.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it was kind of like what? And so all of those, as I understand it, though, were either produced or somehow guided by either or both Dave Filoni and John Favreau, right? And so
Hmm.
they kind of have a similar cadence. This one is done by a totally different guy. Um, and instead of with the other ones where like a different person directed each episode, so it's like a different film. This is Tony Gilroy all the way through. Andor.
Hmm.
And so the benefit of that is there is kind of more of like a creative vision to this one. And it's very different from the other Star Wars stuff we've seen, kind of different than everything,
Yeah.
in that it's much more grounded in reality, and like it's much more about the characters and their interactions. So there's not as much wars in the stars going on in this one. Whereas like the previous episode, so Dave Filoni came from doing this Clone Wars cartoon and the Rebels cartoon, right, which are like CG cartoons for kids, where each episode is kind of like we have either a big lightsaber fight or a big star battle each episode, and it's for kids and it's fun, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Mandalorian is, right? Where it's like there's a big action set piece in each one, and then the finale is like the biggest one. And and where like the story is kind of like, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this guy, it sounds like this guy Gilroy he's already part of the Star Wars family, but this reminds me of a video I actually just watched, and I can't remember who made this, but it's like a big YouTube content movie guy, but he was talking about Empire Strikes Back and how they brought in. So like Lucas had done the first movie, and then
Hmm.
they brought in this other guy, Irvin Kershner, who's like it was just a normal movie director, not like a. I mean, Star Wars was new at this point anyway, so there was no like big Star Wars community. But he came in and he directs Empire, and he he like didn't really care about Star Wars itself. Um, like there was people saying like on set he like forgot character names, he forgot who forgot like what a Wookiee was and stuff like that. So he didn't really care about all that stuff. He just like was a classic film guy and he just wanted to make a good film.
Hmm.
um and it's like a lot of all the and then they compared this video essay I was watching, and they compared this to like all the Disney stuff that's coming out in the last 10 years, which is just like they're just obsessed with the characters. They're like, we have all this IP, like all these, we have like, oh,
Yeah, make
Boba
sure
Fett.
you get this IP in there.
Yeah, we got to do a Boba Fett show. We got to do a Han Solo show. We got to do a show about every like side character, and we have to like do all this fan service stuff. And it's like, just bring in guys who just care about story, or like who just care about making good films or good TV.
Yeah. Yeah, and on this so far, there's been mentions of like planets and stuff like fan service in that way, but it's there other than Mon Mothma, you know,
Hmm.
everybody loves Mon Mothma. Um, there's no cameos of anyone that's known in the Star Wars universe. And like they barely even have stormtroopers because they're dealing with like lower level Imperial people who aren't even stormtroopers.
Hmm.
And so, but like, yeah, so it's kind of refreshing, and some people I've seen have just said like the dialogue's really well written because it's written as if like people are actually having a conversation. It's not just like, you know, characters saying lines at each other about Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but like it's much more like for instance, in the first episode, there's like a loveless marriage where the wife kind of hates the husband, and the wife's kind of more on like the rebel side, and the husband's just kind of like a lame-o. And like I was like, you know, I've never seen like a marital argument in Star Wars, you know.
Yeah.
But like they throw that in there, and then like um the thing I was going to bring up about Rogue One even is Rogue One was great in the action and stuff like that, and the cinematography was great. There was a great sense of scale from the director of Godzilla, who also did scale really well in the new Godzilla, um, the first Godzilla. Um, but what was kind of lost is you really didn't care about the characters too much at the end of the movie when it was supposed to be like their tragic deaths.
Hmm.
Spoiler alert for Rogue One. Um, like you kind of cared about the girl and Andor, but like the other guys, you really didn't get to know them. Like even though the Chinese dude was like cool, but they just kind of unceremoniously like kill some people, and some of them even die off screen, and you're just like, yeah, I didn't really care about like who was like there was like a, you know, a Cuban guy who like had to plug in a cord or something. And like you know, it would have worked had they like spent a bit more time getting us interested in these characters, but in this one they're planning a heist similar to in Rogue One, which is kind of like a Star Wars heist movie, and they actually don't even introduce these characters until like the third or fourth episode. But like there's like this cast of characters, and like they're all really well written, and you kind of are like invested in like the success or the downfall of these characters, even though like they probably didn't even have as much time as in Rogue One. And um it's like really well done. All the character stuff is like really well written, and you are interested in what's happening and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I was not going to check this out. I just sort of, I was checked out of Star Wars stuff basically,
Uh-huh.
but based on what you're saying, I'll at least check this out now.
Yeah, and the other thing is like it shows like low level empire people, and like some of them are like, I'm not really into this whole thing. I just want to get my promotion and get my money or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm. Get the
and
GI Bill.
and then there's like a sniveling guy, like butt sniffer guy who's like, I'm gonna do everything right for the empire, and like he totally like sucks. And like, yeah, there's like cool character stuff like that. And then now there is one episode left, so who knows what kind of fan service they're gonna throw in. But um from what I've seen so far, I kind of like it. Now the argument against it is, and from what I talked to my brother, who's kind of like more of just like a bro in his movie tastes,
Mm-hmm.
and he like loved Rogue One, and he's like, isn't it slow? And I'm like, I guess it is kind of slow. So like if you're not interested in just kind of like spending some time in the Star Wars universe, then it's probably not for you. But it is pretty well done, and it's a higher level than any of the other Disney shows so far, in my opinion, at least on the writing and like cinematography and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm interested. Um, let's jump to what was this werewolf thing you were talking about earlier?
We don't have to talk about it, but the newest thing Marvel is doing, which relates to the next thing, is they are doing special presentations. And the first one they're doing is this one that's called Werewolf by Night. And so what it is a 50-minute short film, I guess, or something,
Mm-hmm.
like a single episode essentially.
Yeah.
And it's in black and white, and it's about a Marvel character called Werewolf by Night. It also has an appearance of Man Thing, if you know who Man Thing
I
is.
don't.
I didn't either, but I now know who he is. And so it's like Marvel monster hunters go out and try to hunt a monster, and then one of the characters is the character Werewolf by Night, who is a werewolf,
Hmm.
like kind of just a traditional werewolf. But they filmed it, and like the werewolf looks like an old 50s werewolf style, like it's just like a human with a bunch of hair on his face, and maybe like
Yeah.
a fake nose. And then it's all filmed in like black and white, but it has like modern CGI and stuff mixed in there. So it's kind of like an interesting thing. But apparently Marvel's just going to start like pumping out some of these things where it's like, we don't know if we want to do a movie yet, but maybe we'll just show this guy and have him show up in a future movie or something. And
Yeah.
so yeah, they just like introduced a few characters and in this like black and white Halloween special.
Yeah. They must just have so much stuff that.
They got a lot of IP.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then they're just gonna just gonna make stuff, and if
But
people
so
respond,
apparently some of the movies that they had announced are going to get like demoted to this
special
special
presentation.
presentation thing on Disney Plus.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
what is Marvel doing?
I'll jump into something I was watching, and then we can go to the thing we
Okay.
talked about. So to take a dark turn, there's this there's this Netflix series about the prolific serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Um, there was a lot of like warnings, I think, not to watch this from people online, and I guess I ended up watching it anyway. Um, I'm not really like I'm not like a true crime or serial killer person, but I kind of was at one point. I mean, I at least like, I guess as like a kid, you go and read all the like Wikipedias, or at least back even before, like at the library or something, we'd get books about about these things, and we'd be like, oh, who's the worst serial killer, and we'd stand around at night and talk about it.
Which serial killer would win in a fight?
Yeah, who was the worst, who was the most evil, who was like, yeah, who would beat all the other ones and stuff. But um so I guess I had enough. I had a lot of
Remember the serial killer trading cards, and like you'd be like, "Oh, you got Dahmer."
well, from the Dahmer show. If serial killer trading cards are real, I would not be surprised based on some of the other stuff they talk about in the show. Uh, so anyway, I had this big background in stuff like this. from like when I was a kid. So I knew all about Dahmer. So I guess I gave in. I'm like, all right, I had read about this a bunch as a kid and a teen and stuff. So I'm going to see how they handled this. And so I would say, I mean, if you're squeamish at all, and if this stuff is exploitative, and it's like, I don't really know there's any value, social value, I guess, in like telling these stories over and over, because it probably just makes the families mad, and probably just causes a lot of weirdos to like go and do like self-guided, well, not even just self-guided, there's actual official tours. But people go out and do tours of these sites, and they go to the houses where people lived, and some of those families still live there and stuff. So I'm not I mean, this is kind of, these are stupid. It's kind of a stupid like thing, right? That that we watch these things and they keep getting made, and that there's all this like fandom around it. So that said, I watched the thing. It's not like a slasher film, or like a, it's not done as a horror, really. I mean, it's done as a sort of a dark and depressing thing. Um, but it's more of it's actually kind of just like a slow drama. And the main issue with it is that it's incredibly slow. And Netflix always does this. Some of the other streamers I think are a little better about it. Netflix, I think, has this thing where they're like, they're trying to keep you on platform. Like if they can get you to watch 10 hours versus 8, that's like a big win for them. Like they just want to keep you there. And so this is 10 episodes. It really only, to tell the amount of story they had to tell, it really only needed to be like, they could have done it in like 4. But they just drag things out. They do these really long scenes, which are, a lot of the show is just concerned with like his, like, just how he's feeling at any given moment. Like they really go big on Dahmer's like state of mind, his like how he felt like an outsider, and how he felt alienated.
Well, I mean, being a cannibalistic serial killer will do that to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was he's kind of an interesting case, because he's, in a lot of ways, and this is not unusual for these guys, but he, at least as portrayed, he's probably low IQ to like mentally deficient, but then he's also clever about how he would do evil things. But then at the same time, he wasn't like not that clever, because he didn't really, the show makes it seem like he made very little effort to hide what he was doing, with lots of neighbors and stuff complaining about like sounds and smells and stuff. The show really tries to play up the like race angle, because he did primarily target black men, gay black men. He was gay. He'd go to the gay bars, and he would pick up gay black men and bring them to his apartment, which was in like a literal crack house.
Serial killers gone woke.
Yeah, and then he'd kill them, and then the implication, and I know, I think this is completely legitimate. It's just that the show portrays it. So Dahmer, I mean, he was getting away with this largely because these are rough neighborhoods where people go missing. They either they die from an overdose or something, or they're a victim of some
And this
violent
was
crime.
the 80s during the AIDS thing, right?
Yeah, there was. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was during his later killings. I think were after AIDS had like really gotten big.
Yeah.
Uh, but the show kind of like overstates how like conscious he was of that fact. Or like he may have noticed that in the inner city or in an urban area he could get away with this stuff, but he didn't like pick up, he didn't read some stats and be like, oh, these areas are, uh, you know,
He didn't look up FBI crime statistics.
yeah, he's like, oh, cops don't care if you do bad things to minorities. So I will only kill minorities. It's like, it's kind of just, it was the easiest thing for him to do. He wasn't like consciously, well, maybe he was. Maybe someone can make a comment. Some true detective or some true crime uh, cat lady can write a comment and say I'm wrong. But and they also show that, I mean, the cops were inept. There's record of people reporting very specific things that should have led to Dahmer's arrest, and that the cops like didn't really follow through. But the show like exaggerates that by a lot, and it's like you could just tell the truth, and it would look bad. It would make those cops in the Milwaukee Police Department look bad, but they exaggerate it by like fivefold. And so it's like, well, you're only kind
Hmm.
of hurting yourself, for anyone who bothers to like Google this. Um, so and they introduce like this fake character, this a next door neighbor who's a black woman uh, who basically like they make it seem like she knew what he was doing all along and that she warned the cops a bunch of times. But then you Google it and it's like not a real lady. It's just kind of like they're just kind of again they're just exaggerating like
It's
how
like the black lady astronaut
yeah.
movie.
And a big thing they don't talk about this in the show, but pulled up some old articles from the early '90s, and people are like, yeah, we suspected something, but in this neighborhood we hear gunshots all the time, and we hear people screaming all the time, and things smell terrible all the time. So, like, we didn't know that anything extra bad was going on with this guy. So,
Did you see the tweet that said if Jeffrey Dahmer was Indian, he never would have got caught?
I didn't see that
A
one, but
black person tweeted it. I
yeah,
didn't.
was that one of the recent
Yeah.
black versus Indian battles?
Yeah.
Yeah. um. So anyway, I don't necessarily like recommend this show, but it's also not.
Was it a good show?
It's well made. It's
It
well
is.
made, but it's just way too long.
That's a lot of these streaming shows.
Yeah. It's way too long. And they just take a lot of time on things that aren't that interesting, or they could have they tell the same part of the story over and over, and it's like just be succinct. They also do a lot of chronology hopping, but like not
Uh,
for any reason. Like I don't think it makes the story any more interesting, or um I don't. It just makes it a little more confusing.
right.
And so I'm not sure why they do that. So anyway, I mean, it's like it's all right. I mean, you don't need to watch it. I watched it for you, I guess.
Yeah, we watch things so you don't have to. Put that
Yeah,
at the front of the episode.
yeah,
This is the garbage show.
yeah. One of our
Um,
one of our fans who I don't even know if he's a fan. Maybe he's never listened to an episode, but he said we pick up the dog poo and put it in your face and say smell it.
it's not true. I don't agree with that
Yeah, I
fan.
mean that's not
He
quite
is
true.
a fan though.
Oh,
He's a
good.
big fan of ours. Uh yeah. So
I'll jump into one more, then we can do that last thing.
okay.
I rewatched Avatar
Yes. Taruk
because
Makto.
yeah, because there's a new one coming out in December, right?
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to revisit the old one. We'll do like a full episode on this later, soon, probably before the new one comes out, or like when the new one comes out. But um, I'll just say quickly. I mean, like I watched it again. I liked it, but I probably liked it better than when I watched it. What was it come out 15 years ago or something? 12 years
Yeah,
ago.
I watched it recently too and I was like, this isn't bad.
To me, one thing I know it's not actually based on a comic book or anything, but to me it's like this is actually like a true comic book movie because it's so it's like so simple.
Mhm.
And the like the emotions that like all the various characters have and the motivations of the various characters, they're all pretty one dimensional, except for, Jake Sully. He's got like conflicted emotions, but everyone else is pretty one dimensional. Like everyone else is like a comic book. It's like you're just looking at panels of a comic book, and
Here
uh,
I am. I'm the bad guy.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I'm the corporate guy who just wants money. I'm the military guy who just wants to like hurt people. I'm the research lady who just wants to do research and not actually help the corporate people.
I'm the Natiri girl who just wants to keep my traditions alive.
Yeah, everyone's like very. Jake Sully's the only one who like has really any uh like change, I guess,
Mhm.
or growth throughout the whole thing. Um, but that's fine. Like that's fine. It's just like, and a big part of this, and I don't, we'll get into it on the when we actually talk more about this. We do a Avatar specific episode, but like James Cameron was trying to make something like for the whole world, and it's like he didn't want to have a complex story or anything. He just wanted to make this really cool visual world to live in, and then like people in China and India and everything could watch the movie and not there wouldn't be any chance of any like cultural misunderstanding, like because it's all so simple. Um, and that for him, I think the real he's kind of like a he's like one of the most reliable money makers in Hollywood, but
Right, like every movie he makes is one of the most successful movies of all time.
yeah, so but he's also very like, but he's not necessarily like this. He doesn't strike me as like this crazy storyteller. Like he doesn't seem
Mm.
to care as much about stories. He seems a lot more into technology and like the craft of storytelling.
Yeah,
Um,
well, what about Terminator 2 and Aliens,
I think those are like the better examples of like meaningful stories, or at least
which are
Terminator 2.
sequels, right? And so like he took a world that already exists and kind of like took it to the next level.
Yeah, so maybe he'll do that with Avatar 2. Maybe Avatar 2 will be a lot more, maybe there'll be a lot more there.
Hmm.
But but most of his stuff, it feels like to me, after Terminator 2, most of his stuff has just been like concerned with like the technicality of like how do you make it look cool to make this big boat sink, or to make Avatar or whatever.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, and the next one's going to be a water-based one.
yeah, and he's obsessed
So,
with water. He loves going underwater.
eating fish sticks with his best buddy Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. And he's like, Guillermo, no, you can't do that down here. Um,
Guillermo, stop.
no
These fish have rights.
means no. Uh, so anyway, that's just a quick way of saying I'm. I mean, I still don't think Avatar is. It's like not a great movie, really. I mean, I don't like. It doesn't like. It doesn't help me explore like depths of you know the human existence or anything. But it's
Mhm.
okay. I like it more now than I did, and I'm actually a little excited for the new one.
Excited.
I would say, yeah, I'm excited for this Avatar
I
2.
I'm kind of excited just to see like he's been working on it for like 12 years now.
Yeah,
Like what is he hasn't done anything else in 12 years but work on this movie. So like it better be something.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think I heard that he's filmed the third one too. Like they're both like,
I think he's filmed like 3 more already.
well, they were supposed. What I heard most recently, and I mean,
Uh-huh.
comment if we're wrong. Um, if you're an Avatar cat lady, um, that's like a big demographic now. By the way,
They
Avatar
like
cat.
learned the language and stuff.
Yeah, and they speak Navi, but what I heard is that he's like filmed and edited number two. He's filmed number three, or at least like most of it or something. And that four and five, he doesn't plan to make those. He plans for
Oh.
other people to make those. That's and like, so he sees it as like him building this universe, and then he's going to let other people explore it. And like some of the other, like I think four and five won't necessarily be about Jake Sully.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's where I'm at on Avatar.
If only I could go to Avatar Land in Florida and perform
Yeah.
Kamshmi with the living tree.
Yeah. Have you been to Avatar Land?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Um, well, we'll talk about that
Yeah, we'll
maybe
talk
when
about
we
that.
do the Avatar episode.
Yeah.
Um, maybe we could do a GoFundMe to send Cool Fraser to Avatar Land in Orlando.
That would be like the worst expenditure of money ever.
I've seen some pretty bad GoFundMe's.
Yeah. We should do it though.
Yeah. Um, okay, so that's me done. Now let's get into that last thing.
Okay. We've been hinting at it. What is it? What is this show that I've been watching
Well,
that is so important?
we've more than hinted. We said it, but
Oh
maybe I'll
yeah.
edit that
I
out.
watched all the episodes of She-Hulk. That's right, everybody. She-Hulk and me. We've seen every episode together. Here we are. At the end, it finally ended. And She-Hulk is over, and I don't have to watch any more episodes. And I hope there's no more episodes. But
Did you and
why did I
She-Hulk?
watch it? Is it good?
Did you match with She-Hulk on the Tinder or whatever the in movie version of Tinder is?
Yeah, I did.
Sounds like she swiped right on
Okay, so
everyone.
what is going on in this show? That's kind of the question.
Let me tell you real quick what I know about the show, just
Okay.
based on the discourse around it. I've not watched any of it. I watched the trailer, which we talked about on this show, but uh here's my understanding of She-Hulk. She's a lawyer and somehow she's a Hulk, but like that she's only a recent Hulk.
Hmm.
And but she's still mostly a lawyer, I guess.
Yep.
Uh and she, I guess, likes hooking up with guys. That's kind of from the trailer, but also from a clip I saw where I guess some like incels. Have you heard of incels?
The
Um,
incel culture.
yeah. So I guess some incels like got a sex tape of her, and they played it at like a
Oh
public
man.
function where she was, and she freaked out.
Okay.
That's what I know about She-Hulk is that she has a sex tape.
So here's the interesting thing about She-Hulk is um when it came out, when the trailer came out, some of the CGI looked so bad and people were like, "What is this? You've got She-Hulk twerking in a trailer."
Oh, that's the other thing I know, the twerking thing.
Yeah, and so like the Marvel universe has essentially been one note, right? It's been, there's a superhero, they have a big battle and they win, right? Like that's kind of what it is. So She-Hulk comes out now. She-Hulk in the comic books is kind of like a joke character in a way,
Yeah.
and she's just the lawyer of the universe, right? They picked her to be a lawyer, so she's a lawyer
Hmm.
and a Hulk. And so she's kind of like this campy character anyway in the thing, but they didn't really explain to the audience, come and watch She-Hulk for this funny rom-com drama or rom-com sitcom essentially is what it is. It's like a sitcom.
Hmm.
They didn't say that at all in like the marketing. And so a bunch of people were like, "What is this? This looks like a joke." And the answer to it is a joke. It's intended to be funny and a joke. Now the problem with it though is they wrote into like in like the 8th episode or something, like the 6th episode, they reveal that the actual enemy in this show are incels who hate the Hulk because she's a woman and she's the Hulk. And they kind of don't really have a coherent argument against her. So in this last episode, they sneak someone into the incel meeting where they're all like, plus she's a woman, and then everyone's like, yeah, yeah, she is a woman, and they're like agreeing with her. So it's like, and being involved in this discourse in general is just kind of funny because it's like the writers wrote the show intending for incels to get mad at it so that they could write that into the, like, they knew what the audience reception was going to be
Hmm.
of comic book fans, and they were kind of like, let's make that the villain then.
Yeah.
And so one, I want to know, like, what do you, I feel like a lot of shows have been doing that where they kind of like court controversy on purpose, like Ghostbusters, like since Ghostbusters basically,
Uh huh.
people have been like, let's get the nerds mad at us on purpose.
Yeah. They that's like half of things now.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, I mean, I think I know what it is. I mean, I think it's basically just that no one. There's so
Just get
much.
internet buzz?
Yeah, there's just so much stuff now, right? Like
Yeah.
it used to be that people always went and saw the same like on any given weekend there's like 3 or 4 movie options, and it's like everyone would see like one of those 4 movies, and it's like now you got video games, you got streaming, you got movies, you got
Podcasts.
yeah, so much other entertainment options, and it's like they don't have the budget to like actually advertise to the point where anyone would see it. Like that
Hmm.
would cost a lot to like actually advertise all these things because there's just so many of them, and you just wouldn't break through. So you have to do like this fake controversy stuff because that's got to be a cheaper way to get buzz than actually just
Yeah.
buying ads. So I mean I think it's just buzz. It's just they're just trying to break through any way they can, and it's like any even just It says you're offline. Can you hear
I'm
me?
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's weird. It says you're offline.
Yeah, it said disconnected for me too, but I could hear
Eh.
the whole time.
All right. Well, this one might be funny when we put it together. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just they have to break through somehow, and
Yeah.
the fake controversy is
Well,
the easiest and cheapest way to do it.
and so and then also like okay, so in this last episode what happens is throughout the whole show She-Hulk talks to the audience, right? Breaks the fourth wall.
Hmm.
And then in this last episode um she's like shouldn't this be over already? Oh, there's still more to go. And like then at a certain point it's kind of like the climax of the show. The incels have stolen her blood because they secretly got someone to sleep with her to make her look like a slut. And even though they're in love with her, like it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And they inject themselves with the Hulk serum and start becoming a nerd incel Hulk. And then she's like, "Wait a second, let me pause this. I don't like this." And so then She-Hulk hops into the Disney Plus UI.
Wait, what?
Yes, she comes out of the Disney Plus like video selection screen,
Oh my goodness.
goes into a different video and says she wants to meet with Kevin, breaks into the Disney Plus Studios writer room with the actual writers of She-Hulk, writing the show and trying to come up with an ending. And she's like arguing with them about how dumb the ending is. And then they were like, well, we can't change it because Kevin makes all the decisions. And then, obviously, alluding to Kevin Feige, the
Yeah.
runner of Marvel. She then makes it into Kevin's office, and Kevin is revealed to be an AI robot that makes all the decisions for Marvel Universe.
Whoa.
And then she changes the ending.
Oh man, that was not the original plan.
It doesn't seem like it, and it's bad, and um like it makes no sense, and I'm like, maybe these writers just like suck or something.
Yeah.
Like it really, like there was really like nothing. Now, the thing I will say about She-Hulk, despite all of this, is as like a romantic comedy, it's kind of okay.
Hmm.
And if you go in thinking I am watching a sitcom, then it's kind of okay. But like if you're thinking it's part of the Marvel universe in some important way, it's not. But like a lot of the arguments against it just don't work because like it's not intending to be a serious thing. So like people being like this is dumb, it's like it's intentionally dumb. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know, man. I
Oh
don't know what to
wow.
think about this. It's not great. There's a couple funny jokes to it and it's kind of like interesting to see a sitcom in the Marvel universe. So like I guess that's something, but you really don't need to watch it. But it's also like it's bad, but it's not bad for the reasons that most people are saying. Like it's not bad because of like I don't know.
Twerking.
Twerk. Yeah, it's not bad because of twerking. The twerking is fine. But like it's bad for other stuff.
Wow. That's funny to hear how they handled that. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
because I
like
was like, what is the ending of this? Like what are they doing? And so like the whole like kind of hinting throughout the season that the nerds are trying to get her blood or whatever. That was just like, nope, we're not doing that. I guess.
is that in the final episode? I might check that
Yeah,
out. I just want to see how they
yeah.
like
Just watch. You could watch the final episode and be fine.
I want to see how they handle that like fourth wall thing.
Like she goes into the UI, busts out of like her She-Hulk poster icon,
Yeah.
and swings into another one.
Do like the genuine fans of the show think that that was like cool?
I tried to look at some of the response, and like, it seems like some people are just like, well, the problem was like some of the Disney hardcore fans were like, the only good part of this is we get to see that Hulk has a son, because that's like the dumb reveal at the end is just the Hulk shows up and he's like, by the way, I have a son now, and so they've got like Hulk's son in the show now, and and yeah, so like that's like But like that's the only thing like the people who are positive about Disney Marvel are saying they liked is that there's the reveal of this new character that they like,
Oh man.
which is like that's like the worst part of the show. Like, so the other episode I would say might be worth checking out is they have the Netflix Daredevil guy show up in it, and I actually think they do it fairly well
Yeah.
because there's like a romance between She-Hulk and the Daredevil.
Oh, interesting. So you should touch on this other thing we were talking about, but on the Daredevil thing, like that, I think it was a video of Max Landis that you sent.
Hmm.
He's saying like Daredevil season 3 was like really good. I don't think I ever saw. I think I
I
saw
didn't see it
season.
either.
I think I saw season 1 and thought it was all right, and then I think season 2 was kind of boring, and I don't think I ever came back. So I don't. I don't know. I don't think I ever saw season 3, but yeah, you sent that video about like Max Land. That's his name, right? Max Landis.
Yeah.
He was like commenting on how like sexuality within or
Okay. Yeah.
sensuality within Marvel was like is very male centric.
Yeah, so anyway, he has a video that says why doesn't Black Widow get to be hot? That was released after the release of Black Widow. Which if
Mm-hmm.
you watch, she's like a spy, she's James Bond but female, right?
Yeah,
And also her background is she was kind of trained to be like an escort slash killer. Like
yeah,
that's what Black Widows are.
yeah.
But
Those like
surprisingly, she has no romance, no male female contact whatsoever. It's like very platonic. And so he was commenting it on that, but I had actually had the same idea prior because a couple weeks ago I watched both the Incredible Hulk, so 2008's Edward Norton's Hulk, which is technically in the MCU,
uh-huh.
but they replaced him with
Uh
Ruffalo.
yeah. The
And then
Gruffalo,
I
yeah.
also watched the first Iron Man. And the thing that stood out to me was in the first Iron Man, and I also watched Iron Man 2. There's just parts where there's like a hot girl who's not wearing very much clothing.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
Iron
not
Man.
integral to the story. It's just like Tony Stark is like has a hot girl in his bed.
Yeah.
And
He
even
was a
when
playboy.
Black Widow is introduced, she's like showing a lot of cleavage and trying to like seduce people as Black Widow's character would do. And then in the Incredible Hulk, there's like a scene where he's in Brazil, and there's just like hot Brazilian chicks that like him,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, why are there no hot chicks in Marvel movies anymore?
Yeah.
And then what Max Landis also pointed out is like in the newest Thor, you get to see Thor's butt, and like in every male one, like they get them all steroided up. Like even Paul Rudd in Ant-Man has like an ab scene where he's like all sexy, and
Mhm.
even what's his face, Chris Pratt has like an ab scene when he
Yeah.
was kind of known as a fat guy, and like there's like a big like gay ab scene in every Marvel movie now, like where
Mhm.
you're supposed to like objectify the man and be like, oh, isn't this guy sexy? And then but they just don't do it for women at all. Did you lose me?
No, I'm still there. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it tells
and
us something about well, I
but
don't
what
know.
I've noticed is it's
Yeah.
not just Marvel too, because it's almost all movies. Like I was kind of just watching those are old 2008 movies, and it was just like they used to have hot chicks in movies that were just there to be hot.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like just I guess women whose only job is to be attractive have all migrated I guess to just social media. Like
Just OnlyFans now.
yeah, it's just easier to just
Yeah.
like if you just want to make money off of being attractive, I guess it's easier to just post some pictures every day than it is to actually like go be on a movie and actually have to. I mean, at some level, being in a movie is difficult. You got to be somewhere at a certain time and do your lines and all that, and maybe run and jump and maybe get injured. So this is a lot easier. So now,
Well, and what's funny is throwing back to Rings of Power. I listened to the official Rings of Power podcast, and they interviewed the Galadriel actress
mhm,
and the woman who runs the podcast, because of course it's a woman. Says the other thing I loved is uh, basically she's like, "You're not hot in this show," which I love. But she's like, there's no like objectification of like you being a female elf that's hot. And
Yeah,
I'm like, what is this? Like, you just love having hot people pretend they're not hot. And then also on social media, I saw Scarlett Johansson being like, I feel like I was just being used for being hot.
yeah,
It's
and
like,
it's
well,
like,
didn't you know that?
well, I mean, the easy take there is just, well, you wouldn't have a career at all. Like that,
Right,
that's like
right.
why anyone
You wouldn't have been.
cared
You
about
were
you in the first
cat. Like
place.
the only reason people liked you is because you were in that Japanese movie and you were very busty
Yeah, like
with Bill Murray.
I mean, that's the easy take, and but I don't know what it is about. I get it's an insecurity thing or something, but they they don't want to acknowledge that,
But they
and
can
so
have these scenes where men are meant, like, explicitly meant to appear as sexy and objectified, right? And that's totally fine. Which you would think the woke progressive thing is it's fine for women as well, but it's not anymore.
yeah. I wonder if I wonder. I mean, what element of this is the audience? Like, women who go to these movies don't want to, feel just bad, I guess.
And
So
what percent is like Me Too?
yeah.
Like you can't just be like, yeah, we hired this girl because she's super hot. I don't
Well,
know.
is there any indication that any of this is changing?
I don't think so.
Well,
Um,
there's like a market void. Then someone's going to come along and
well,
just be
so
like,
the only one I can think of, and I haven't watched like the more recent ones, is Fast and the Furious has just like a hot chick scene
yeah,
in every um movie where it's like, oh, here's a bunch of hot chicks dancing for some reason.
yeah. It seems like to me then there's room in the market. Someone can come along now and be like, hey, what if I just started making movies a little bit more like they did 20 years ago?
Well, you know who it is Michael Bay. He's still I although with the more recent Transformers, I don't know, but he was doing it with Transformers where it's just like this is the hot chick.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big thing for him. But is he still like? What's his last thing he's done? I don't even know.
I don't know. Reminds me of a hot chick's room. Have you ever been to a house with a hot chick's room?
No, what is that?
It's just a room with hot chicks in it.
Never heard of that.
No.
Uh, oh, I don't know. He's like listed on a bunch of stuff, but producer. Yeah,
Yeah, he's not directing anymore. No more hot
he's
chicks.
directing is hard work.
Well, and it's just odd though. Like and so yeah, the Marvel universe is very gay now.
Yeah, lots of fan service for women and gay guys.
Yep.
Well, that actually, the Star Wars thing. Going back to Star Wars, like that was kind of an issue with basically all the
Yes.
modern, like the trilogy with Ray Skywalker or whatever, is like, I mean, she's not an unattractive person, but she's not the kind of girl that like teenage boys dream about. So, um, which is fine. She didn't have to be, but uh, those movies just didn't have any sort of like romantic tension or
Mhm.
anything. Like the old ones did. There was like the
Well,
love.
the second one did, but then they ruined it.
Which aspect was that?
Where she saw a shirtless Kylo Ren and they
Oh
touched
yeah,
fingers.
yeah. That there was a little bit of that, but
But it was more for Kylo Ren. It was more women were in love with Kylo Ren, not
yeah, and she just is not a good conduit for that. Like, um, but the old Star Wars movies, and
well,
they
even
don't.
Princess Leia, who's like a badass female character or whatever.
Yeah,
She gets in a bikini for Jabba the Hutt.
yeah. Well, and even that aside, like they just had like that tension there between like the
Yeah,
love triangle and all that stuff, and they tried to recreate some of that in the new one, but like
not very well. It
yeah,
wasn't consistent either.
it's not believable that these people. And there was also just a lack of like it didn't the main trio in the new one, Oscar Isaac and Boyega and the girl, like they didn't really seem like a friend group. Like they didn't seem like
Mhm.
three people that would actually spend any time together. Whereas like Luke, Han, and Leia kind of did, and uh, that they seem like they might date each other, but like this new one just didn't have it. They just didn't have that energy, and I don't know if they wanted it and just couldn't get it, or they just didn't see it as important.
Yeah, it's almost like they feel like they can't have a woman be of sexual interest to the viewer,
Yeah,
which is odd.
yeah, and maybe I was saying like that there's a space in the market, someone can come and fill that, but maybe not because it's just gone other places. Like people get that somewhere else now. So
Yeah, maybe it would seem like antiquated to be
although I
like,
did see that what's her name? Sydney Sweeney is doing a Barbarella remake,
okay,
which I don't really know anything about Barbarella, but I looked it up and it's like some sort of superhero or space opera. I don't really know what it is, but anyway, it's a lady in not a lot of clothes, so maybe that's coming back.
we're back, boys. We're
Yeah,
back.
yeah. What is anyway? We'll leave it at that. I had
Yeah.
those like trailers. We won't bother with that right now. We went on long enough, but yeah, we're back. They're putting a blonde girl in a movie again. We're gonna see how that goes.
Oh man. But yeah, movies are bad now. Uh, Andor kind of being the exception of the week.
Yeah.
Although
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
it's boring.
I might watch this Andor.
I'm enjoying it. There's one more episode. We'll see how it goes. They'll probably just have like Baby Yoda show up with a double-sided orange lightsaber, and it'll be like ruin the whole thing.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. Anyone who's listening, don't forget to subscribe, or else I will get I'll get in trouble or something. So please, something bad will happen to me.
Subscribe, or else I'll break my ankle.
Yeah, donate to the Cool Frasier GoFundMe.
Send Frasier to what's the name of the planet?
Pandora,
Pandora.
the floating mountains of Pandora.
You're the new Avatar expert. I used to be with my Taruk Makto references.
Yeah. All right. Peace out, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everybody.